My name is Marcel, and I am an alcoholic. And my home group is a too early group in San Francisco, which is a big book study at 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. My sobriety date is September 18th, 1988. And I am grateful to be sober and to be able to celebrate another day of life. I'd like to welcome any newcomer in early sobriety, and I hope all my heart and being that you get to stay. I want to thank the committee for asking me to share. It's always an honor and a privilege. Thank you, Christy, for all of your help and for that wonderful box that was delivered to the room with all those goodies in it. And I want to thank all the speakers that I've heard. Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you for the AA and Al-Anon speakers that I've heard already. I'm looking forward to hearing all the other speakers. Ralph always puddles me up. I always love to hear him. Yeah, I look out in the audience, I see actually a lot of people I know from a lot of different places and from different service entities. And working together, we have the magic and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Lake Tahoe. I started taking my son camping here when he was 4 years old. He's 48 now. And I was up at Emerald Bay yesterday where we used to go at DL Bliss. And I was also watching the salmon spawning, over on Taylor Creek. And he could handle the chairlift when he was 6 up at Heavely Valley. So I have a lot of incredible memories of Lake Tahoe before I entered that dark world. A good friend of mine, Eleanor, called me from Massachusetts, and Eleanor and I have a lot of history, together. And I used to go to meetings drunk, and I was down at this meeting called 10-10 Valencia, and I kind of overshot the mark a little bit, and I'd kind of fallen off the chair, and I was kind of lying in a little heap on the floor. And Marilyn came in, and she told me later on, she said, I started to go up to you, girl, but you're a little too far up there even for me. And Marilyn now has 30 years of sobriety, and I'm godmother to her son. Okay. But Eleanor came in, and Eleanor is a tough New Yorker. And Eleanor got down on her knees, and she said, lift up your head, dear. You could have dignity and grace as a woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I believed her because I knew she'd been there. And she helped me back up onto the chair. One of Eleanor's sons was the same age as my son, and when he was 35, he had an aneurysm and he died. And I could be there for her like she was there for me, because Alcoholics Anonymous had taught me how to do that. And that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We stay sober and we help one another. September is always an emotional month for me. It is the month of my sobriety birthday. It is also the month of the death of both of my parents. And I was at the height of my disease at the time, and my disease said, I've really got other things for you to do. You don't have time to be there for your dying parents, so I wasn't. I was not the daughter that they deserved to have. I also went through a very difficult divorce, and my only son, who I love with all my heart, had shared with me that he was very content with me not being a part of his life. Tom I is one of my mentors in the program because I do a lot of meetings in prisons. And Tom has a lot of experience in prisons. And many times Tom says he doesn't like the term speaker. He prefers the term storyteller. Because when we come in the rooms, we don't share our dogmas and we don't share our beliefs. We share our experiences through our storytelling. And over the years, after hearing many, many storytellers share their experiences, I have learned how to be a better mother. I have learned how to be a better partner, a better family member, a better human being. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm also the product of an interracial marriage. My father came from the Philippines to study. My mother's French, grew up in the South. Drove clear across the United States in a convertible, picking up hitchhikers along the way to take care of her aunt who was dying of cancer in San Francisco. My mother would be 109 and my father would be 102, and they were both tough as granite, but they had gentle hearts. My father would go overseas to fight in World War II, and sometimes you'll hear the term that all Asians look alike, which is not true. When my father returned from the war, we were mistaken for being Japanese, which was not healthy following the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So I learned a lot of very challenging survival skills when I was very young. That did not make me an alcoholic, but I do understand the dynamics of racial prejudice. That's very cruel. We were walking home one night, and 3 men actually forced us into an alley, and they were going to harm us. My father just came back from fighting overseas. He always carried a large knife, and he kind of got down in warrior position. He said, 2 of y'all go down. Knowing my dad, he could have probably taken out all 3. And we slowly backed out of that situation. That was one of many, many situations. My sponsor said to me, Marcel, I think you made the decision when you were very, very young that no one's going to hurt you because you're not going to let yourself get close to anyone. I'm not going to give you a chance to reject me, man. I'm going to reject you first. It has been my experience that Alcoholics Anonymous has never rejected me. When I first came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, one of those treasured elders came up to me and said, Marcel, whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Because the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And when I came to these rooms, I had no dreams, and I had no hope. I weighed 85 pounds. I couldn't talk, and any dignity that I ever had as a woman had been beaten out of me. I was dying of alcoholism. That's how I came to. It took me a year to learn the Serenity prayer. I just couldn't get those little phrases to hang together. And my brain cells have been on hold for a very long time. This program all started with love and service, and to love is a verb. It's having genuine concern for another human being, but they're doing something about it. And I came to these rooms with my very best bad look. I'm the one dressed in 3 shades of black with my back against the wall, sitting way in the back of the room with my back against the wall, daring you to talk to me with my less than gracious attitude, and I'm armed. And you welcomed me to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you were so very kind to me. I did not come back to my second meeting because of your wealth of knowledge of the big book and the 12 and 12. That would come later. I certainly came back to my second meeting because someone was kind to me at my first meeting. I used to watch the woman who was to become my sponsor, Kathleen, sober a long time, always had the time to talk to newcomers. She was so alive. What I didn't realize was while I was watching Kathleen was watching me. She'd look in my direction. I'd always look away because I couldn't look at anyone. Because my perception of what I saw in your eyes of me was very ugly. How you feel about yourself is projected to others no matter how much you try and camouflage it. Now, Kathleen thought I was Native American because when I was young, my hair was very, very long. I was also very, very dark because I was always getting drunk and strung out and passing out in the sun. I had an incredible tan. So Kathleen would go home to her husband and she'd say, Jerry, that little wooden Indian is at the meeting again. Because there was not a trace of emotion on my face. It was like a stone mask. I think we're very wounded when we come into the rooms, but God did it through the wounds. With the help of the steps and a very wise sponsor, I was able to bring up the things that had wounded me so deeply into the light and air so they could heal like any other wound. The emotional wound is just as deep if you've been cut or shot, and wounds heal from the inside out, and my wounds were very, very deep. I flew back to Chicago for a family reunion. I could not stop drinking. I was insane. They put me on the plane. I remember I landed in San Francisco. I have no idea how I got there. My cousin called my son, who was in L.A. at the time. I said, you've got to go to San Francisco. There's something terribly wrong with your mother. Otherwise, I'm going to fly from Chicago. And he came up and he found me weighing 85 pounds, curled up on the floor like an animal, dying of alcoholism. Once again, he called a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. They came over. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't even sit up. They carried me into the station wagon, drove me up to detox, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, I do not want to be an alcoholic. I've been going to meetings for a long time, and I have something called acute postponement. I have to get a sponsor. Well, I know I should get them. I'll postpone that. I need to read the book and the steps and get a service commitment. I'll postpone my sobriety for a very long time. And I also looked at the differences all the time. I didn't want to be like you. I hear you talk about your drunk drivings all the time. I drove drunk all the time. I never got drunk driving. I had problems with water transportation. I had a tendency to crash boats. I flipped a speedboat up on Lake Berryessa, driving totally out of control, very irresponsible accident when over waterfall river rafting. I crashed a sailboat on Alcatraz. Okay. The Coast Guard is not happy with you when you crash sailboats on Alcatraz. So they said, you've got to get a sponsor. And I said, I want Kathleen. I want Kathleen B. And they said, well, she sponsors a lot of women. I said, I want Kathleen B. And they said, well, why don't you call her? And they gave me the number, and I called her, and then she called around to figure out what was happening here. And so she drove up, and she looked at me, and she said, "Are you ready, dear?" It was the first time I was actually able to look at someone eye to eye. And the eyes are the mirror of the soul. And under my heart, I knew I could trust this woman. And the journey began, one alcoholic woman working with another. And I've walked that journey with many women, and they are my gift from God. She said, "Stand up, be proud to be an alcoholic woman in recovery, and do not use your alcoholism as an excuse for not participating in life, because this is a program of living." Then she said, "A lot of women want what I have, but they don't want to do what I do." And she said, "You are welcome to do what I do." So I went on a lot of 12-step calls. I was sober 2 weeks, and I had 3 service commitments. I have never, ever been without a service commitment since I had 2 weeks of sobriety, ever. She said, "Every time you go to a meeting, thank the speakers." I said, "Thank the speakers. It's not easy to get up and share your life. If there's a newcomer there, even though you are new yourself," she said, "you just go up to them and say, 'My name is Marcel, and I'm glad you're here.'" She says, "Try and smile. You always look like you're on the verge of attacking someone." Because if you don't welcome that newcomer, they may not come back. I understood that. Okay. And if someone has a birthday, you wish them a happy birthday. She said, "You focus on those 3 things, and possibly you'll stop thinking about your favorite tragic topic," which of course happened to be me. The first time I went up there to thank a speaker, it was at a big speaker meeting, the perspiration was pouring off of me. It was so difficult for me to interact with another human being. The first time I welcomed a newcomer to the meeting, after the meeting she came up to me and she says, "I'm so glad you talked to me because I'm so frightened." And she started to cry. Now, she thought that I helped her, but she helped me, and that's part of this program. We help one another. And for the first time in a very long time, I just felt that I had done something right, and I wanted to do it again. That particular meeting where I met her, I don't drop in that often. I dropped in there one night, and the topic was newcomers. And this woman raised her hand. She said, "I remember the first time I came to this meeting, a woman came up to me during the break, and she welcomed me. I was so glad she talked to me because I'm so frightened." And after the meeting, she came up to me. She said, "Do you remember me?" She said, "I remember you," because she had 1 year, and so did I. And Kathleen said, "Don't try and look good in AA. Tell me your worst. You think I got sober to be admired? You're to be grand, to get caught up in your perceived magnificence." She said, "You got sober to give maximum service to another human being. This is a program of discard, it's not a program of addition. I used to really fantasize my life would really be embellished by the addition of more and more money, and a bigger portfolio, and a bigger house, more clothes, faster car, and a new man who was an amazing lay. I found that did not necessarily bring me a quiet heart and peace of mind. It's a discarding of my old ideas. My old ideas are not discarded without practicing the principles of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which are the steps. And they are meant to be practiced. So many times I hear people, "I did this step, I'm doing them again." On page 15 in the 12 and 12, it says these steps are a group of principles. What's a principle? A principle is the basic truth, spiritual nature, which if practiced as a way of life will expel the obsession to drink and enable to suffer, which is me to be happily and usefully whole. I never felt whole when I came here. And you told me these steps are not punishment. These steps would set me free. I'd have to remain free because I have to practice them. I have to remember, I'm a volatile alcoholic. Where I drink and use opportunities to hurt people, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I'm capable of doing that to you stone cold sober if I do not practice the principles of the program. Kathleen said, "Marcel, your world will change as you change. And that's going to require ongoing commitment on your part. And anything you put before you recover, you're going to lose." She said, "It's all right for you to look at your past, stop staring at it." She always talks about the delusion of wellness. The delusion of wellness. On September the 4th, she celebrated 55 years of sobriety. And she said, "I'll never be too sober that I can't get drunk." And she remains a very active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd really like to be like her when I grow up. You know, an amazing woman. And she said, "I don't care how hard you're trying this." She said, "You're trying very hard. Some things just come with time. Also, sometimes they don't come just because you're sober. And many things in my life have not come to fruition without the passage of a great deal of time. When I had 20 years of sobriety, I got together with my former husband, a man I had not seen for 23 years. When I got sober, I tried to make the amends to the best of my ability. Actually, he's from Germany. As a result of the steps and a lot of guidance of my sponsor, I'm really good friends with his entire family in Europe and the United States. He has a brother in Germany, a brother in Palm Desert. Don and I go over there and visit. You know, we always have a wonderful time over there. Whenever there was a loss of the family, I would send him a note. He would acknowledge it. He did not want to see me. And Kathleen said, Marcel, if your heart is in the right place and you're coming from a place of love, the universe has a way of opening its arms and helping you with the healing, if your heart is in the right place. I was going through some old photo albums, and I found some beautiful pictures of he and his mother. He was actually from East Germany. I used to go to East Germany a lot when the Berlin Wall was still up. I thought he should have these photos of his mother. So I got a beautiful card with orange and yellow flowers, because I remember how he cherished his garden. I put the photos in there. I said, I thought you should have these photos of your mother. I said, there were some difficult times on our journey together, but I would like to thank you for gracing my life. And perhaps the time could come we could have coffee and kuchen together. So off goes the letter. 2 weeks later, I go to get my mail. I open up the mailbox, and I see that handwriting I had not seen for 23 years, thanking me for the photos of his mother. And then I get another note, and then I get a call. He said, I don't come to the Bay Area that often, but I would like to have lunch with you. He lives in a little town called Willits. So he comes down to San Francisco, and we're in a little Thai restaurant having lunch, and he said, I have to ask you something. Were you really angry when we divorced? He got married right after we divorced. I was more than mildly irritated at the time. I used to go to meetings saying I wanted to execute him repeatedly, because once wasn't enough. But instead I found myself saying, sometimes we have two nice people who grow apart. It was not necessary for me to go into the deliberate manufacture of misery. You will find that line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in the family afterwards on page 133, and dab my benevolent bullshit behind my ear and judge others. And because of that, we had a really nice afternoon together, but that's because my world has changed as I have changed. This was my son's stepfather. And when we divorced, he had sent my son a very cruel letter. It was very, very cruel what he sent to him. When I told my son that we had had lunch, he said, Mom, I've heard you talk a lot about forgiveness over the years. This is a family disease. This is also family recovery. So my son called him. My son's lived overseas for a long time, which resulted in my former husband starts calling my son overseas. He starts sending him little notes. He starts sending him little cards. In November 2010, when my son was visiting, they got together and had lunch after that, seeing each other for 26 years. And then I got this beautiful card from my former husband saying, I was so honored and happy that Glenn made the time to come and see me because it is such quality time. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank you, Al-Anon. I've been a grateful member of the Al-Anon family group for a very, very long time. That could not have been accomplished without AA and Al-Anon working together. So I honor all the Al-Anon members here, and thank you for all the service you do. Now, this is very nice the way this all turned out, but if I had never heard from him again after sending him those pictures of his mother, I would have accepted that too, because I sent the photos unconditionally, not expecting anything in return, no expectations, no motives. I always have to look at what my motives are. The slate was clean. Actually, it's my former husband's birthday today. He's 80 years old. And he says, I like to talk to you. He says, I like to call you because I trust you. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank you, Al-Anon. A lot of my father's family lives in Hawaii, and it's always very emotional when I go there because one of my cousins looks exactly like my dad. And I adored my dad. I adored this man. He was 5'2", he weighed 118 pounds, but to me he was as strong as a water buffalo, and he had a heart as big as the sky, and I adored this man. But I'm an alcoholic, he had leukemia. And I used to take him to the hospital for blood transfusions, and the nurses would look at me in total disgust. Look at that scum bringing her father like that, and I was scum. He would hold my hand, and he would smile. He'd say, try not to drink so much, dear. He never judged me, he only loved me. I broke his heart, because that's what alcoholic women like me do. Because what I have to remember, no matter how long I'm sober, when I drink and use, nothing is sacred. Nothing. My husband, my child, my family, my friends. If you're going to survive, you better get out of my life so the time would come that everyone would leave. And the feeling of being alone and unwanted is the most terrible poverty. I went back to school in recovery. My father's family is very well educated. He always wanted me to finish this degree. I was terrified. You burn out too many brain cells when you're out there to compete in the academic world. Actually, I did very well. it seems that if it wasn't another student, there was a professor at Alcoholics Anonymous in almost every class. And I was in class one night, and the professor had said, "I'll pick an object in your house and write a few notes about it, then turn your paper over." And then he picked 3 people in the class to get up and share about their object, and I was one of them. And I picked, but he said, "Share about it, but without your notes." And I had picked my father's favorite chair. Now I'd thought about this for many years, and I said, "This is my father's favorite chair." Now, when I was a young girl, again, my hair was very long, and my father would sit in that chair, and I would sit on a little hassock in front of him. And my father would make coconut oil from scratch like in the old country, and he would put that oil in my hair, and he would brush my hair and brush my hair until my hair was like strands of long black silk, and that chair was filled with love. My father always wanted a son, so my son would sit on a little hassock, and my father would sit in the chair and whittle these little wooden toys for him. And then my son would climb in his lap, and the dog would climb in his lap, and the cat would climb in his lap, and the chair was filled with love. But after my father got leukemia, he was too weak to sit in the chair, so I would prop him up on the couch with pillows, and I would sit in the chair, and I would talk to it, and I would read to him, and the chair was still filled with love. But after he died, I couldn't sit in the chair anymore. So the chair was vacant for a very long time. So one day I brought the chair upstairs by the fireplace, and I would sit in it, I would read it, but there were the times that the chair just seemed to embrace me, just like my dad. Now, when I said that in class that night, I couldn't talk for a while because I experienced every raw emotions of my father's death that night that I had not experienced when he died because I was drinking and using at the time. So you may never know that many, many years down the road you will get to experience something so very special in your life. Sobriety doesn't shield me from life. I got cancer in my 11th month of sobriety. 2 people very close to me died of that disease, and I drank through both of their illnesses, and I buried both of them when I reached out to no one. But sometimes God will give me a really special gift. I like the way the package is wrapped at the time. I could have gone down out of the path. You don't have to waste yourself on booze and drugs, or you can embrace this very special gift in your life. I chose to embrace that. I was surrounded by the loving arms of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been a runner and a loner all my life. I never had a friend before coming into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was unapproachable when I came in here. I had a wall out there that I let no one penetrate. I live up 3 flights of stairs. I don't have an elevator. This Irish family said, you come stay with us, darling. And I said, "Yeah, I don't want you to go into any trouble." I hardly got the words out of my mouth, and this big plate of French toast and bacon's headed my way. And they had meetings over at the house every night, But I had to be physically stopped to experience that. You don't take me easy, man. In early sobriety, a man I love with all my heart died. And I still miss him because I loved him. And that's part of the promise of being able to feel. So many things were left unsaid. So if there are people in your life who you love and you care about, tell them. Because the years go by very quickly. And they're gone. One of the last things he had said to me, "You never said you were sorry," which was a perfect time for me to make things right. And I didn't. That is one of my regrets. But regrets are an appalling waste of energy. You cannot build on them. They're only good for wallowing in. And the message for me is, Marcel, do not lead a life that leads to more regrets. You got to with your kindness, because the language of the heart in these rooms is very real. But the rage did not leave me without the steps. I buried a lot of things when I was out there, but I buried them alive. Unless I incorporate these steps on my life on a daily basis, it's been my experience that history repeats itself. I remember one of the first speakers I heard said, "Sobriety is not the goal of AA, it's just the entrance to AA." Just the entrance to AA. And every one of these steps has a principle. The principle of step 1 is honesty, and Marcel being willing to change. I have to remember what I'm like when I drink. I'm mean, and I'm cruel, and nothing is sacred to me, and you have no value to me. I have to remember that no matter how long that I'm sober. I never want to get that delusion of wellness about what I was like. The principle of step 2 is hope, and Marcel believing that you can change. Hearing other people's experiences gave me hope. Belief leads to reliance. Reliance leads to trust. And I trust in the process of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because any level of decency, integrity, and joy has come to me as a result of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Principle of step 3 is faith. The faith and the trust to move forward with the rest of the steps. Until I did this, I did not change. I had my subtle air of entitlement, demanding that you adjust to me. Demanding you adjust to me. If you have trouble with the concept of God, that's all right, that's cool. But don't let that stop you from going forward with the rest of the steps, or you will die. And it's never again the principle of step 1, that last line in step 1, the 12 of 12. It's a merciless obsession. A merciless obsession. I never want to forget that. I never want to forget the toxic animal I was when I was out there. Because that's the forced courage, the courage to take that searching and fearless moral inventory. How can I do anything about my character defects if I don't know what they are? I don't know what they are. And when I was writing all these what I perceived horrible, terrible things, my sponsor said, don't forget the good things you did, dear. And I did do good things. I did do good things. But the more that alcohol and all those other things permeated my life, I stopped doing those good things. Also, when I looked at that 4th step, I got a chance to grieve over the things I had done. We don't talk about grieving a lot at meetings. I had incredible grief over what I had done. And I had to go through the process of grieving. Part of grieving is anger, isolation, bargain with God. Feel a healing to occur. I was afraid of my anger. Bad things happen. I had to go through the process of that. But I had a good guide. I had good guidance and mentors for that. Because it was step 5 is integrity. When I drink and use, I have no integrity. I have no moral code. The integrity shade of myself got into the human being. I never had anyone listen to me in my entire life. It was a very sacred experience for me. Very sacred experience for me. I've had the privilege of hearing a lot of 5th steps. That someone would trust you at that level to share their innermost secrets with you. It's something very sacred. It's very sacred. Principle step 6 is willingness, but willingness without action is fantasy. I think I'll just sit around and be willing today and fondle, my resentments, and nurture them. And then in step 6, year 12 and 12, it says rebellion can be fatal. Rebellion can be fatal. I look at step 1. I better do this 100%, but with my character defects, well, maybe I'll give up 33.5% of anger, 25% of gossip. Half measures avail me nothing. I got sober because I wanted to be a better person. I really wanted to be, and I have to commit to that. Kathleen always said, always have a beginner's mind and then you're teachable. And she said, after 55 years of sobriety, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. Principle step 7 is humility. My first glimmer of humility is coming into a room of Alcoholics Anonymous and saying, I do not know what to do and please help me. I do not know, please help me. And nothing's changed. I come to you because human beings are God's language. There's incredible wisdom here. But I have to acknowledge, I don't know. Please help me. Steps 8 and 9, the forgiveness steps, the men's steps. Forgiveness and justice. Responsibility and restitution. Responsibility and restitution. I was missing in action, and my son was looking for me, and I caused a lot of problems at work. And he called work, and Mary Kay had answered the phone, and she'd said to my son, are you blind? Your mother's a drunk. Where do you think she is? I was a little upset about that because I thought possibly she could put that a little bit more delicately. And but just how delicately can you put you're a drunk? She was right. She was right. I had to, after I got sober, I returned, to that arena of work, and of course Mary Kay was head of everything, and keep a low profile, Marcel. It's not what's my sponsor always said, make friends with adversity because it's part of your life. Adversity is not your enemy, it is your friend. It's not what's happening to you, but it's how you are reacting to it. So I was sitting at my desk, and Mary Kay comes by, and I had a little meditation, a little reader that I look at every morning on the desk. And she said, may I look at this? And she said, yes. And she said, there's some really nice passages in the book. And I said, yes, there are. So I got a copy of it, and I put it to Mary Kay on friendship. I just left it on her desk. Later on, Mary Kay got breast cancer, and my mother had breast cancer, and I was busy in the hospital, and I walked in, and she had that little book by her bedside. And she said, I'm really glad you gave this to me, Marcel. It really helped me. And she just took my hand, and she just held my hand, and she died the next day. The slate was clean. But again, my world changes as I change. Marcel being willing to do something differently. Had an incredible rage over my alcoholic mother when I came in here. The very mention of her name could make me tremble. But through the process of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would come to accept myself as an alcoholic woman and to understand and appreciate her torment and to later come to love her at a depth I never thought possible. I was able to separate the individual from the disease. I did not condone her actions. There were some bad things there. Acceptance does not mean approval. I went on a lot of meetings and a lot of sober vacations with Dr. Paul, who wrote that, and he always said, acceptance does not mean approval. It was an incredible experience for me. When I experienced that peace with my mother, Kathleen moved down to Palm Desert, which we've always remained in contact. But I wanted to talk to a woman locally, so there was a woman, Moran, that I connected with. And Jan had 48 years of sobriety, and she had the same birth date as my mother. And actually, she died in January. And she was a very wise, very kind woman. And the privilege of having two sponsors with a lot of living experience in sobriety. And this is a program of living. I've watched these two women go through incredible obstacles and challenges. I call it Kathleen with my problems. She says, you don't have problems, you have challenges. And you'll always have a challenge as long as you're drawing a breath. Jan's husband was sober for a very, very long time. And I learned a lot about relationships from them. These two liked one another. They were funny, and they liked one another. And she asked me what was important to me in a relationship. And for me, honesty, trust, respect, someone I can communicate with, someone I can laugh with, integrity. Do we have the same values? And if this is very important to me, I better work on becoming this person myself. Now, here I am, baby, make me happy. I met my partner through service. He's sitting back. This really cute little guy with his eyes open. And actually, we did service together for 7 years before our first date. Our first date was actually doing a meeting at San Quentin, very romantic. I mean. And we've been in service for 7 years, and then later on, that dynamic changed. And I not only love this man, I respect him, I trust him. I really admire his integrity. That was the first attraction to me, his integrity with his family. I myself don't have any grandchildren, but he has 7. I mean, he shares them with me, And like I said, over the years, that changed. And one night, I brought him home, and he never left, And I'm really glad. I'm really glad. We've had challenges in our life. We've lost a lot of people to cancer, and he has a visual problem. We have God, we have the program, we have each other, we've got it all. I just have to open up my tool bag and use it. Principle step 10 is perseverance. I have to continue to look at myself, and sometimes I'm wrong. I'm just wrong. Never mind this, I'm sorry, I am wrong. And let's clean this up and make it right. I remember particularly when I first got sober, Kathleen had said to me, she said, I want you to listen to your self-talk. She said, 99% of your difficulty is caused by your tone of voice. And I needed to hear that. I had a very combative, hostile, type of demeanor, And I had to look at that. And again, people who've known me for a very, very long time, the comment comes up, oh, you've really softened over the years. And thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous, now. Step 11, before I get out of bed in the morning, I lie there and I breathe. I said, here I am, and I know you're there. Please guide me today using your tools to be the very best person that I can be, but not to be attached to the results. Please reveal to me what needs to be revealed. Please heal for me what needs to be healed. Please guide me today to bring some happiness to someone's life. And when I go to bed at night, were you joyful to be with today? Teresa of Avila talks about treating your insides like a garden. God planted the garden with us to water it. And so are the flowers. Laughter, caring, loving, giving, sharing, because these are the blooms of life. And stop watering the rocks of the weeds. Fear, anger, resentment, bigotry. Stay sober and carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers, but the practice of principles in all my affairs, which includes family. It's important I treat my family as nice as I treat the newcomer. I remember my son saying to me, I really got you have all the service commitments, Mom, but I'd like to be on your list. I've never forgotten that, you know. And it is a family disease, you know. Rod Hampton had passed away. We did a lot in age 9. Rod had 6 kids, and he said, you know, Marcel, you have to, with your family, you have to equate sobriety with time. This I must earn. Had to earn my family's love, my family's trust, my family's respect. And as Polly says, the score will never be even in my lifetime. Will never be even in my lifetime. And it took a lot of ongoing commitment, you know, with change, you know, with my son. I remember my sponsor saying, Kathleen had 4 sons. Her oldest son passed away. And she said, in the very beginning, she told me, she says, you know, Marcel, your son is going to say something to you sometime. It's going to crush your heart because it's going to be the truth. She was right. I remember one morning he called me. You know, I get up really early in the morning. He called me really early in the morning about a subject that I was not in total agreement with. You know. In the course of him trying to change my mind on that, he chose to throw out something at me about my alcoholism. And he caught me totally off guard. And what he said was very cruel. And the reason that it hurt me so deeply at the time, that everything that he had said was the truth. And I said, if you still choose to think of me along those lines, that is your choice. After I put the phone down, I said, how could he say that? I'm trying so hard. And I was trying hard. You know, you're in early sobriety. Also, you get sober. You think your family's going to open its arms. That is not my experience. It's not my experience. He was flying in later on, you know, for a high school reunion. And he flew in. The subject wasn't brought up again. But when after I'd gotten that phone call from him, I'd called Kathleen. She wasn't home. I called another woman, and she met me before I got to work, and we talked. And when I got to work, she'd got to my office ahead of me, and she'd left a bouquet of flowers on the desk with a note. I said, how nice that someone cares. And I went to a meeting that night, and what was the topic? Families and alcoholism. So I said, forget what I am. My name is Marcel. I'm an alcoholic. You know, where am I going to have to go to a meeting? You know, who I am, where I'm going. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Marcel. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm going to be. This is what I have to do. And I'd sit at home alone and ponder this with my little alcoholic mind. When he flew in for the reunion, he didn't bring up, you know, the topic again. And but he really wanted to talk to me after this reunion, because there were 2 young men, you know, at that reunion, and both of these 2 young men had been to my home, and one of them has been in recovery, is in recovery, and he's married to a substance abuse counselor, and I'd seen him at a lot of meetings, you know, and the other young man is not in recovery, and I'd seen him on Haight Street in San Francisco just strung out on alcohol and drugs, and when my son came home, he said, you know, Mom, what happened in 10 years with these 2 young men? I said, it doesn't take 10 years, dear. Sometimes it happens so very quickly. Last night, you saw 2 young men who've made 2 different choices. He said, I'm glad you made the right choice, Mom. The door opened a little bit. And that's what's happened over the years. The door opens, the door closes. And for it to be at the level, you know, it is now, like I said, my son's lived overseas for a long time, and it's nice, you know, Don and I, you know, go overseas. Sometimes he comes here, and it's really nice when I get on that plane, and he puts his arms around me and says, I love you, Mom. Thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon. That was over a period of time. Again, I had to equate sobriety with time. This I must earn. This I must earn. And somebody gave me a backhanded compliment one time. He says, when I really want to know the truth about something, I call my mom, and she listens. And when I was out there, I was the last person that he would call because I was never there to listen. I was never there to listen. You know, about sponsorship, you know, Kathleen always looked like she stepped off a fashion magazine, and I kind of looked like I jumped off a freight train and landed wrong. But she never said anything to me about the way I looked, you know, about the way I looked. So I'm sitting next to her at the meeting. I kind of look over there, and she's quite a bit older than I am. I thought, why does she look 10 times better than I do? So we'll start out small. Well, let's wash our face and comb our hair. You know, let's start out small. And so then she started coming to meetings, and she'd have a little box. So she'd give me this little box, and I'd open up the box, and like this red blouse would jump out, or a green blouse would jump out. She said, I think this color would really look nice on you, dear. You know, here I'm wearing my 3 shades of black, you know, and I was a little reluctant. I didn't really want you to see me. You know, I didn't want to put color on it. Put color on, you might see me. So she's bringing me these little boxes, and my friend Maria, she's giving Maria skirts because Maria's always coming to me with these shredded pants on all the time. Well, I found out later on, Kathleen was from the ghetto of Chicago. She had 4 sons by the time she was 20, dragging around the United States packing a gun. And the women of Alcoholics Anonymous, they gave her blouses, and they gave her skirts, and they helped her to have dignity and grace as a woman of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she shared her experience with me. My best friend in the program died, again, 12 years ago in September. It seems everybody passes in September. And Bob saw me when I came in. Bob kind of looked like Jim Coburn in The Magnificent Seven. That's what he kind of looked like, you know, with the cowboy hats and with the boots, you know. And I used to go to this meeting. I'm brand new. I'm standing in the doorway of this meeting, and this is when you smoked. You know, you couldn't see across the room. The smoke was so thick. And he was sitting in there, and he saw me standing in the doorway. And he said, I saw you, and I saw myself. We hadn't even talked yet. By the look on your face, he said you had that silent, toxic rage to destroy everything it touched. Now, Bob was in Korea. He was in Vietnam. He was on the streets for a long time. He was in prison, but he was sober for a long time. And he got through to me at a level that no one else could. And we talked every day. It was a very sacred friendship we had. Then he calls me up one day. He says, I have a tumor in my lung, and I say it's going to take me, and I want you to repower attorney for life support because you are my friend and I trust you. And I was his friend, and he could trust me. And while I was not there for my parents while they were dying, I was there for him. And when I went to the hospital, he said, is Don here? I said, no. And he said, well, I want Don to be here because I don't want you to be alone when I go. Here, he's dying, but he's still thinking about me. And that's unconditional love. And I didn't know about that when I came here. You've taught me about that. So I was introduced to H&I when I was, in detox. I've done it for a long time. I was detoxing, and Big Norman came into the meeting, and Big Norman weighed about close to 300 pounds on a light day. A few people in the room remember Big Norman. And so Norman's talking about H&I, which I know nothing about, but he starts talking about alcohol and the world of violence. I know a lot about that world. And after the meeting, he came up to me and he said, Marcel, you don't have to return to that world. And he gave me that eye-to-eye look that only the eyes of another alcoholic can give. In the depth of my soul, I know this man knew my world, and he left to be many years before I realized that this gentle giant of a man had planted the seed of hope and trust that night. I'm at a meeting, and I'm sober, and this tall, crusty, white-haired old-timer is headed in my direction. He said, hey, you kid. I've been watching you for years, kid. You're a real taker. You've always been a taker. You have to learn how to give. The H&I business meetings tonight, and you're going to give yourself something called a commitment. I'm going to be at your house at 6:30. I'm going to be on time, and you be ready. He turns around and leaves me there. And Jim was the coordinator for San Quentin. And so he shows up at my house at 6:30. And I'm finding out, how does he know where I live? And what had happened, some of the old-timers had gotten together, and they said, what are we going to do with her? She's, so we'll get her an H&I commitment. That's what it is. And so I go down to the H&I business meeting, and who's sitting at the desk but Big Norman, that 300-pound gangster who'd been in detox, and Norman was kind of coordinating all the jail meetings. And I thought, well, Norman's here, so this gig's okay. So I got a commitment that night, and I've been doing it ever since. I've probably done meetings at about 75 facilities in Northern California. I've been doing the prisons and jails for 24 years consistently, and it makes my heart sing. At this time, I'm still in San Quentin twice a month, Folsom, Backville, Solana, Federal Prison for Women in Dublin, and down on Bryan Street. And it makes my heart sing. It makes my heart sing. Last year, I was actually doing a pre-release program at the Federal Prison for Women in Dublin. I did it every Monday for a year. And we could bring some outside material for this. This is actually like building blocks of life for these women, before they get out of prison. And I brought this poem on the butterfly. I love the butterfly. I know I've given it to a few of you since I've been here. Because the butterfly signifies transformation. Transformation. At the end of the poem, it says, people will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So at the end of the year, the last class, the women wanted to have a little celebration, and the warden said they could have 1 hour after the last class, and they wanted the theme to be the butterfly. So Claire and I come in for the last class, and the women had gotten all of this colored paper from the chaplain. And we walk into the class, they transformed the whole ceiling into like a little mini garden, and all these colored butterflies were hanging from the ceiling. These beautiful colored flowers. And one lady was very clever at paper cutting, so all these little white lace gazebos were hanging in between the butterflies, and the flowers. And then on the board, they'd made a big rainbow. And they said, we made it. That's a year commitment for these women coming. And then they made a big heart, and the whole heart was comprised of butterflies. And underneath they said, thank you for the way that you made us feel. And I brought the poem again to give to all the women, and on the bottom I'd written, it has been an honor and a privilege to get to know you. And it was. And I hope I never forget how Alcoholics Anonymous made me feel when I came here, because I was so broken when I came here. I was so broken. When I had 2 weeks of sobriety, an elder gave me this passage, which I've given to a few of you. I've looked at this every day since I had 2 weeks of sobriety. It's about exhaustion. I don't need anybody to make me miserable. I can do an incredible job of this, all by myself. I just really don't need your help. It's amazing, what I can do all by myself. Exhaustion is the result when I use my energy on mulling over the past with regret, or in trying to escape a future that has yet to arrive. Anxiously hovering over it for fear that it will or won't come true uses all of my energy and leaves me unable to live today. Yet living today is the only way to have a life. I will have no thought for the future actions of others, either expecting them to be better or worse as time goes by, for in such expectations I am trying to create, I will love and let be. All people are always changing. If I try to judge them, I do so only on what I think I know of them, failing to realize it's much I do not know. I will give others credit for attempts at progress and for having had many victories which are unknown. I, too, am always changing, and I can make that change a constructive one if I'm willing. I can change myself, and others I can only love. I have to give people the dignity of having their own journey, which is very difficult sometimes when people you love. Yeah. My son married someone who had a lot of my tendencies, which I found terrifying. Terrifying. And so I would double and triple up on my Al-Anon meetings later. Because I didn't cause her problem. I can't cure it. I can't control it. And no amount of complaining, criticizing, condemning is going to change that. The only thing I said to him one time, I said, when I've been doing prison meetings for a long time, and I said, my normal state of mind, not drinking or drugging, I would never hurt someone that I love. So one night I'd come home from a function. He works in an industry, where there's a lot of entertainment, and they were supposed to be going out again. And he said, I think we should stay home. And she was very upset about this, and she kind of went for him. And I think she was trying to provoke him into striking her. And he just grabbed her hands into the mine. If I don't leave right now, something terrible might happen. And then he called me and he said, Mom, would you share your experience with me? And that's all I did. I never told him what to do, never told him what to do. And I said, you did see me go through a very difficult divorce. The time had come that I would let go with love, that anger and hate, and it wouldn't come back tenfold. And that marriage would end. And later on, when he was transferred overseas, he would, meet a lovely young woman, from Denmark, and they've been together for a very long time. But again, it is a family disease. It's family recovery. And all I have to do is just show up, stay close to you, do the best I can. But I have to commit to it. Again, that delusion of wellness. Delusion of wellness. I go to just as many meetings as when I first came here. I do more service than I've ever done in my life. With every day, I have more to lose. With every day, I have more to lose. I came to you physically, emotionally, and spiritually destroyed. And you gave me the gift of hope and the gift of trust and the gift of a softer heart. But I have to remain grateful, because it's harder to break a use with a grateful heart. I came to you destroyed, and you made my soul blossom. So why would I ever want to leave you? I want to thank all of you for being here and for the privilege of being able to participate in Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.
I have always been afraid of changes, but you show me life is full of faces. Sometimes clouds got in our favorite places, but we were young and unaware.
Oh, I got you, there's no reason to chasing payment on my own, 'cause you're here to stay every night.